Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm your host, Stephen Topham the third, at your service. Well, we're going to talk about this subject very seriously after what on the last podcast I acknowledged quite a lot of information, and it's not easy to absorb in one day or one night, etc., going down the line. It's time. This podcast is called Time to Reflect. Now, it's very important that you take this in consideration at all times, please. This is no BS, this is straight to the point, right? We have to acknowledge what is going on at the railway as much as everybody else around you, right? Around the globe, everybody knows the hats quite well, right? We're not bullshitting, we're going straight to the point, and every time we do it, we get it done correctly, right? To a certain level degree. There are people that are still asking questions around the globe, trying to get the answers that they need or need to understand of, and making sure they got what they need, right? But there is a fine line of time to reflect on all the podcasts that was done from the very first one all the way to this one. You got to accept this as it's time to reflect because I don't want you as a customer or a community that understands it that we exist for a reason, and if it wasn't for us, there will be a lot of complications around the globe. And I'm not saying that because a lot of people will eventually realize we are the hacks are global, right? Every generation we rise all the time, but acknowledge what's in front of us could be the way forward, right? When you reflect on knowing about the Northwestern Railway Company and my grandfather's railway route, if you will call it correctly, you have to acknowledge that he had connections, partners, and and friends, obviously, because it's all connected as one. When you think about people today, today is what you need to reflect on. It's knowing the damage that is done, not just to you, but everybody around the North Norfolk Railway as a whole, because the North Norfolk Railway is the home base of the North Western Railway Company, or the North Western Railway HQ, which is headquarters. Now, acknowledge that they are the wrong. You have to acknowledge that why why put the money in when you're not going to have time to realise, to reflect on it, and acknowledge that, yeah, exactly this, exactly that, and it's all true, yes. The only thing is because the railway routes are connected, it's all connected in one bucket. The time to reflect on the my family and understand they have a big role to play for another two generations after me. So you got my son and my granddaughter, right? So realistically, you have to realize, okay, I don't need what you would call saying the whole thing is coming together slowly. So it's time to reflect on what you have absorbed, acknowledge, and understand. For people that don't do this, this is their fault as well because they can't work it out in time or understand this A, B, or C. It's like going down the line and they don't acknowledge it or they don't understand it and why is this, why is that. They've got questions of their own, right? The community knows everything, right? The, the bottom line is, you're wondering down the line, how could this be? And the answer is very secret. I'm sorry to say, it is closed doors on everybody else. Never enough to a point. The thing is, when the member family rises, so does steam, which it has done. It's acknowledged that. So did my parents, my mother, and my stepfather Duck. They all have that gift, right? We have a lot of people say, "Why is all the steam team rising again?" You got to realise, okay, let's reflect on the 1960s, right? It's time to reflect on that because I want you to go back before you were born and acknowledge that 1960s we had a very bad, or the management at the time, and plus the government had a lot of play in this. This is not about politics. We're trying to establish and acknowledge that the railway was in what you will call in bad shape, right? It didn't deserve to be ripped up. It didn't deserve to have all of this taken out, right? When you got houses, let's say certain places have more houses than anything, they could be on this site of the old railway line used to be, or where it's used to be connected. Or let's take Munsley as example, right? Munsley as a whole, right? It's now, instead of a station, it's now full houses, right? That's one example, right? But there's a lot of people say there's been what you call railway remains. Now, a lot of you might think the railway no longer exists, but the site remains nearly the same to a certain degree. Like, let's take Melton Constable as example, right? It was a primary railway line. It used to be everything that the public needs, right? So we have to acknowledge that it's not as easy as pie when you think about it twice and realize we did lose a lot. You know what I mean? You have to reflect. This is something that you have to understand. It's something that you have to drive, but at the same time, upside down, it's the same thing. It's still reversed, right? When you got Milton Constable now, right, no longer a railway station, besides it is a industrial estate, right? That's no longer a railway station. There's no train going through that, and then acknowledge that it could have been what it should have been, right? We acknowledge the time to reflect on the damage that was done in the 60s could have been prevented. But no, people never thought about that. People had to go to other depots, other departments, as such as, let's take Orsted Station as example, right? We're not talking about what you would call we're talking about Norwich Thorpe, right? A lot of my family have worked in Norwich Station beforehand, right? There's always a connection and there's always be a point. But that's not what we had the time to reflect on. We are reflecting on the damage that was done, can't be repaired because a lot of things have changed over the years, which we totally agree with. The North Norfolk Railway had the advantage in the early 70s, between the 60s and the 70s, right? An organisation of volunteers managed to bring that North Norfolk Railway to a point, right? Before the bypass of Holt, which it would have been Holt Station connection, obviously, right? They could have done something more greater for it, right? The damage is done now because you can't do nothing. The Holt Station, the original Holt Station, which is the mile ahead away from the original, what the Holt Station is now, a mile forward is where the original location of Holt Station originally is, right? People or the government thought, okay, it's time to turn this railway into a bypass, right? Acknowledge that was a big mistake. We have to acknowledge that there can't be no turning back, right? So the government screwed up, and the railway ending up having to build a halt about 1 mile away from its previous original location, right? This is why I said to you, it's not about what you got, it's what is a need. And if the Holt station, the original Holt station, stayed in its original location, it would have saved a lot of walking or bus or getting transport walking down there. Exactly where I'm coming from, right? We have to reflect on the Sheringham side as well. This is where the more damage is done in the 60s to the 70s, and people did not realise that a level crossing could have been saved, right? That's why I need people to reflect because the hats are back and now they're trying to recorrect everything and acknowledge where the faults, the pros, and the cons. Right? We acknowledge that the community is not going to be willing to go on the North Norfolk Railway today because the prices are too high. Right? We reflect on the damage they've done. I'm not going to say they're all angels. Right? Nothing is green roses with red roses, right? Nothing is as easy as that. You know what I mean? So the North Norfolk Railway in the 70s, right, and the 80s and the 90s, all the volunteers that worked during that era made the railway possible, right? A logo of the North Norfolk Railway, right, had poppies on it and it acknowledged it was a poppy line, acknowledged it was the next bit of that. Then most of the railway that was like before it was a mile extra added from Rayborn, right? Rayborn had to be rebuilt. Holt Station was a mile away from its original location, right? So it was built on their killing, right? Which is true. But I also have to establish now what you did have then, right? You had Sheringham level crossing that was ripped up, should never been ripped up. This is the thing that we learn from is the mistakes of people's mistakes. And this is the thing you have to look at when the railway was still pumping forward. The North Norfolk Railway never gave up, but they stuck to the prices. This is where the money comes in. The money did not have to be too expensive, right? As things progressed forward up the ladder, the North Norfolk Railway volunteers at the time brought the best in the North Norfolk Railway as a voluntary area, not a company. My ad. Keep that in mind. The company wasn't there. This is the thing that the rail network or network rail or whatever one of those two, it wanted to turn that into voluntary organisation into a company. It doesn't work all that time, right? So establish what could have been foreseen, could have been avoided. So it's time to reflect on what has happened can't be changed back to what it was. Right? So we know the railway has got connection now. We re-established the connection to Cromer or Knapford and Crosby. Now, this is where the boundary is, where you say, right, rail permits are not needed on that level crossing. Because I'm trying to help people move forward a little bit more than what they should. Right? I you it's like saying if you want something done bad enough, you have to look at the pros and the cons of what right throughout the British Rail era, right? They should have they should have thought about it twice hard and kept that level crossing, right? Right? We had to let go of that because that's then done and dusted, and the mistake was done, and we corrected that mistake in 2010 to 2011 in March. So we established that you know everything evolves around that level crossing. I said, if any of the engines, even the electric trains, the greater angler, realise that no one can't use that level crossing, right? It's a standing point of time where I'm trying to make my point across, which I have done in the last podcast. I want you to realise it's not there as a monument, right? That's strike one. Strike two, sometimes Greater Anglia has to take and give. Even the rail network rail house also have to take and give. They have to bend the rules a little bit to get regulations in play and whatever next. But the thing is, when you look at let's take what I know from experience and understanding from people, what is what is the Greater Anglia gaining from West London Station? Nothing, right? What I'm going to say is, and the reason I say it that way is because I know it's all facts and it's all true, right? It's time to reflect what could they done on this situation, right? And acknowledge that Greater Anglia has to give up something because they can't go through to Sheringham. Because what they've done is they've just made a North Norfolk Railway not able to use that level crossing whenever they like or whenever they can proceed further with and acknowledge that it's the money, it's the factor, it's the logic, it's the connection. I said, look, the connection's at Cromer / Knapford, right? We have to acknowledge that Knapford has always been the primary way of connecting up anything up, right? We have to acknowledge that there's more. What you can't see is what you're getting. I am trying to say to Network Rail and and the Greater Anglia to make a compromise to say, look, let's say Greater Anglia gave up West London, right, but kept Cromer as its main connection, right? What does the West London station do, right? Which is Crosby in my case, right? Crosby is not the losing game here. That level crossing in Sheringham that should be used 2 times a day, every day, right? Which then makes the railway feel like, okay, we can make a connection at Cromer / Knapford because they've got 2 platforms instead of one, right? If it was one platform, that'd be a different cat of ball, right? The thing is, when people look at what they got, what they need, what they connected to, and everything else, people want to push forward to Melton Constable, as example, but I'm not going to go into detail of that route because that takes longer to build, right? So we have to prioritize and then go backwards a little bit and say, look, you got this connection, use it, because a lot of people will say it. People can see it, right? That people can see it, they can cross over it at the moment, right? There's a wise choice of saying this. The communication between the the companies or the organisations, vice versa, have got a lack of communication. Now, look at the North Norfolk Railway as it is today, right? Or the North Western Railway Company as it is today. The whole thing is going to look at it and realise, oh, crud. You know, a lot of people will say that because they will say it when they come out of the premises, or they get upset, or they get annoyed, or they get misunderstood, or they get understanding from me. But I don't. I can see where the problem lies, right? So if you can't see, if you can't gain one thing, you're not going to gain the other thing because it's going to take longer to build up. So when you say, "Oh, we can extend the line into the through the bypass and have our platform right there where it used to be," that's not going to happen straight away. So use your initiative, right? You're getting the North Norfolk Railway's getting funding and support, right? At the best way they can right now, right? The customers are like I don't want to go on that way, right, until they sort themselves out. Right? I correct that because I would make it quite clear. It's time to reflect on everything that you have gained and learned. You know, there are times where you have to really understand there's more. Right? So you got a fat controller, or third gen, me, myself. It's only 5 minutes down the road, right? I have done nothing wrong, nor did my Steam team. None of us have done nothing wrong. We established that. But then you got to work out that when people do things in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and the 2000s, all the way to 2019, what did the community got that you've not got it now? Is respect. Respect goes a long way, but with all the mistakes that were done in the past and recorrected there, and understanding the boundaries, it's not about rules and regulations here. This is about understanding the value of what you got, right? Like I said, a bad management makes a bad railway. Now, Greater Anglia doesn't have that problem, right? The network rail don't have that problem, right? They can make a compromise and say, this is what we're going to do, the end story. And it's going to reflect on everybody because it's time to reflect on that and acknowledge what needs to be done to correct most problems, right? Even as small as problems can cause a big problem and a chain reaction that you don't want, right? I'm trying to acknowledge that, to acknowledge this, and acknowledge everybody's what people's needs are, right? And I'm trying to the best of my capability to support you all, right? It's not about winning, it's not about losing, it's about understanding. It's time to reflect on what you have gained and learned and respectfully putting it all right to a very high degree. The North Norfolk Railway will not let go of those high prices at the moment. They don't realise, okay, he has a valid point, 2.5, 2.5 equals 5 miles, right? The thing is, when you add this up, equalize it, and go right backwards and forth, people are forgetting that the level crossing is just standing there. So it's time to reflect on what you gained. You may end up feel like, did we do the right thing for the right job? A lot of people will say yes, 99.9 will say yes, and 1% will say no. But that advantage is what makes you make the time to reflect, to understand the, the North Norfolk Railway has changed, but not because of me personally, or my steam team, or my connections, or my colleagues, or my friends, or my family, even that. We acknowledge that there is a problem that we can't solve at the moment. So when the North Norfolk Railway acknowledges that they've got something they can need and value to understand, that they need to drop their prices, need to get this sorted, and start from the bottom up. It's like a base. It's what you will call foundation. Now, chapter two, foundation. Now, foundation is what the railway was built on, right? Private people, private connections, myself, my family included, were all connected to this connect, right? And acknowledge that you just cannot stay at the top and let it rise, rise, rise. We got a foundation that we can learn, that we can really change around it. So this chapter was really, really down to earth. So chapter two, foundations, is where we began it all in the first place. As you know, as every railway does, each company has done the greatest achievement in their lives, right? Even my family, and I want to acknowledge that. But when you think about 1845 all the way up to this very day, there were a lot of connections that had to connect up throughout certain parts of this journey. This journey is still ongoing. When we have to reflect on everything that's gone wrong, we have to recorrect the damn thing. Which is correct. I'm not going to say it's a false lie because it isn't a lie. But every generation, first, second, seniors and all, we all took an oath to actually say, look, we are fighting for what we need. Not once, because there's a lot of boundaries. I know there's a lot of boundaries as improvement in time, don't get me wrong, but it acknowledges why. Why why do you think 1845 all the way to this present day and still continuing and acknowledging everybody's needs, not wants, and acknowledge that we got this. Yes, we acknowledge we got what we need, but the thing is, sometimes a lot of people say a bad egg affects all white. We all understand that phrase, but the diplomatic of way of putting this is to make it sure that the North Norfolk Railway is not going to stand on its 2 feet for much longer because they got nothing to respect it by, but only by the reputation is what which is their foundation, which is us, which we got to acknowledge that because if you don't, you're gonna get screwed at near the future, right? So we have to bend the rules a bit. Yes, rules and regulations are there for a reason, but when people say that a lot of things that have happened in the time period of my grandfather, my father, myself, and the senior, we have to acknowledge that you have to have the need to have what you need, right? Probably there's a poll that you may understand quite well. I will make it quite clear, right? When you reflect, time to reflect on this, there's a lot of what's going on, right? Contacts, connections, family, friends, etc. We all trying to blend it together, which it has done, right? Every morning, every afternoon, or every evening that you think that what could that railway do better? I know that's coming through people's heads. What that railway could have done better. I understand exactly where you're coming from and an instant record, and it reflects on making people do the right. It's like when they do an action, it can either go right or have a very bad consequence, right? A lot of the time, when people think about it twice, right, it's like turning left or right, if you want to call it correctly, right? It's not going to be that easy for anybody, right? And we have to primarily acknowledge that foundation is what you were based upon. So when people think, oh, this railway is the best, the railway is shit, excuse my language, I get people say railway's a rip-off or something simple like that, and I have to acknowledge that because I have to make sure that it doesn't not happen again. But in fact, just you don't want it to continue again and again and again throughout the year. But the thing is, when people realise there's something missing, they will alert me, right? When I acknowledged that there is a lot more going on than what you expected, right? It's hard for the third generation not to be told, right? There has to be a sequence of the events. A lot of this is real life events. This is sequence of the events that's unfolded before your time and in my time as well, and acknowledge that you're not gonna get everything we need, right? But there's about 99.9% you will get that what needed you need to get. But you need to reflect on what has unfolded, reflect on what has happened, reflect on what could have gone forward, what could achieve better at. Yes, there's a lot of people that make mistakes. Yes, we totally agree with that. But there's a lot of things that you need more than want. And this, I know the prices of the North Norfolk Railway are troubling you. I'm going to acknowledge that because it's not just part of the foundation. It's about acknowledging on the duration of the route, right? I would never put those prices so high, right? I had a private connection established saying, oh, I used to pay only a fiver for that damn route. Excuse my French. I won't mention he or for slash she's name because I want that to be classified as it can go. But I want that to be acknowledged. It's like a full circle saying, oh, I used to pay a fiver to get to Holt. I used to pay a fiver to get to Sheringham. Vice versa, it. And then people are starting picking up the answers that they're looking for. The duration of the route calculates the price, right? The price determines of how far you're going, right? The thing about this is very difficult as it comes. It's time to reflect on why and acknowledge what has gone wrong. And all I'm seeing in my position right now is that bad management makes a bad railway, right? We acknowledge that customers want fair prices. Acknowledge that they're going to be all right on that platform. They want to be acknowledged they're going to be all right on a train. They want it. They when I feel like the, how bad it is in general, there are things that you can't see without acknowledging what could have been done better. And I'm asking the North Norfolk Railway as well as the community on this. What type of agreement would you agree on about certain prices, right? People said to me in the previous rounds, told me it got worse, and it got worse. How would you, as a North Norfolk Railway itself, I'm asking them this question, what could you do better to improve the status that you lost near enough? Right? I'm gonna be honest with you on this one because I don't want you to feel like all your hopes are all in one basket, right? I want you to be acknowledged that there's more to it than meets the eye. You have to understand the foundation that's what built you up in the first place, right? But you also have to realize on the people, the customers, the respect, the honesty, and trust, obviously, because without those three, you're basically just you know like wake up, smell the coffee, and a lot of people think is it really that that simple? It is that simple. Just look around you. Stop like not harassing me, but the question is it's already around you. The answer is already around you. Right? You have to time to reflect and and acknowledge that when you go on that platform, use your eyes and ears. Not everything is in black and white. You got to put things right. To do that, you've got to acknowledge that I'm pushing you to make that right choice. The right choice gives you the right answer, right? It's like a question, but you're getting the answer, right? And you have to be acknowledged to understand why this. I said there's more to it than what you expected, right? But we also have the time to reflect on why it's been unfolded the way it has. Why did the people got booted out in the first place? Why did the management got cocky and rude, selfish, ignorant, and being so like boom boom? A lot of people got disrespected, right? There's a lot more than what you see, right? It's like when you go on that platform, you want to be acknowledged to understand there's more than you see. It's what when you go on that platform and pay your ticket, right? You need to understand that going on the platform is free, right? Because the platform is free, and I'm acknowledging that because I know when they ask for a platform ticket, it's a load of just to pay for it. It's a load of BS, right? So you have to acknowledge that the buffet and the Norfolk Railway are two separate entities, right? When you acknowledge that the Norfolk Railway is not completely in control of this, it makes you understand why. Because what will happen is eventually, it will click, right? Because the buffet area that they use, it's not just for customers. It can be used for the public as well. So it's not a one way army. Don't I know the porters, the guards, the ticket officers will actually moan and groan about this, and I'm gonna give you time to reflect on this because I don't want you on that platform. Because if you're going on that platform and you want to go to the buffet just for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee or a diet coke or have something to eat, the money is still coming in. When the money comes in, right? We learnt this a long time ago before I got booted out, plus all my fleet, the employees at the time and the volunteers at the time, all got booted out, right? Bing bang boom bam, bing bang boom, right? We already knew that you're entitled to go to the buffet, right? But if they're not going to succeed and realise, what, if the prices go up, right? Where would you think they will make t- in my position, if they were going to treat me with disrespect, I'll tell you now, they wouldn't see another daylight out of me half the time. But it's not the case here. This case is to get a diplomatic solution to say, look, give them a free, give them free access to the platform and access to the buffet, because in the day they're going to ask for food and water first, so the money will come in straight off, ding, ding, ding. But when you think about it, it's it's really realistic as it can be, right? How many of you out of the 99.9% that said no or yes, vice versa, what do you actually accomplish by going on it? You get your ride to Rayborn or Holt, even that, or reverse, right? In Sheringham Station or Wellsworth Station, you also got a buffet, so you got food and water, right? But I don't want you to pay for a platform ticket if you're going to the buffet because they're gonna make more money out of the food and water than they would do with the train ticket. Because that's travel. You have to separate travel from food and drink. So when you separate food and drink, it's time to reflect and realize, okay, the porters and the guards will think and realize, oh shit. They will come out, oh shit, or something like that, and acknowledge that it's time to reflect on everything around you because you have to understand not everything is in black and white for just platform prices, food and drink prices, and train prices, etc. The thing is, you cannot. It's like having a freeway direction, right? Right. A lot of people will end up thinking, what has the North Norfolk Railway benefited since 2019 to 2018? Nothing, because they lost everything from day on. So a lot of people will say, okay, you got still with this problem because if you don't clear this mess up and realize, time to reflect on it because to acknowledge what is unfolded and acknowledge that people are in the wrong on the North Norfolk Railway or the North Western Railway Company and acknowledge that they are in the wrong because they don't. When they see a light bulb turned on or a light bulb turned off, they will start thinking, right? The thinking is in the game, right? I want people to realise if we're not going to succeed, what is the best way to go forward? Right? It's nothing to do with me in general, but I'm just enlightening you that people want respect, they want trust, they want honesty. Three things, and then you got to add when they come through the door, what do you want them to do? Because you've got to really realistically, food and water is a separate entity from travel. So you've got two categories, you've got food and water, and then you've basically got the platform, right? The platform it's alright. It's free of charge issue. And you have to acknowledge what is there is not what it is what. It's a need to be like established and understanding. Yes, there's a lot of people that actually got problems on there. Or problems there and a problems here and a problem there and a problem there. But acknowledging by time to reflect on what has happened, acknowledge that it's unfolded quite correctly, and acknowledge that right from wrong, you need to recorrect what could have been done cheaper on the longer run. You've got food and water. Look at the menu. Look at your own prices. This is why the Norfolk Railway failed, because they didn't realise. Okay, he has a point. He has a point that our prices are going up in the buffet area. There is train tickets and all. Don't get me wrong. The platform is free as long as they eat and drink, which is the main reason, because they're still a customer by trade, right? The customer will ask you, I'm going to come on to the platform because I'm coming in to eat and drink first. Probably then people will start to appreciate the railway a little bit more, to realise there's an open door policy on the buffet. So you can't say no, you can't come on there because you haven't bought a ticket. And that's a load of BS. And I'm telling you now, when you go on that platform, what do you think the customers will say if they really worked it out in their minds to realise on time to reflect on what you should have left alone and let it continue naturally? What you're doing now, I think this is where the problem is, which is where the bottom line is, right? It's not about the trains, it's not about the diesels, nothing to do with railway line track itself. It's acknowledging the premises, right? I have really put my foot down on this and say, look, okay, you worked out what is a needy and what is a wanty, right? The needy is food and water, obviously, but you're not going to expect the customers to pay just to go to the buffet. You know what I mean? So you're asking them to pay for a platform ticket and then end up going into the buffet. It doesn't work like that. You know, when you take, it's like saying, if you want to go to the buffet, you have to pay a platform ticket. I said, forget about the platform ticket because you're going to make more money on the food and water. Get it in your head. Ring, 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 ring. When you think of food and water, they survive on food and water before you even travel on a train, right? A lot of this is all reality of what a lot of people understanding of. When people realise you do a track safety test, obviously TST as they call it, and acknowledge that when you're a volunteer, the volunteers always understood things a lot more clearly than they could. Oh yeah, well it's now crunch time, right? We have to acknowledge the time to reflect. I'm not going to give out too much information now because I'm giving you time to reflect and acknowledge where the wrongs to get it the wrongs back into the white. White it's like darkness into light. To actually realise, okay, he has a valid point, so do you. But you also have to realise the boundaries. Right? There's three pieces there. Right? You got food and water, travel, and then you've got platform ticket, right? The platform ticket can't do nothing for you, right? All you're doing is paying to go on the premises on the platform when you're not going on the train. And it's time wasting, money wasting, and acknowledge that the money will be built up on food and water. When you realise that food and water are the key element here, right? Travel is the next one up the ladder, right? Food and water is going to be a little bit expensive. Don't get me wrong, it will add up. When you equalise it in your head, you're going to end up thinking, oh shit, he's right. It's the food and water that makes more money than the actual train ticket would. So when you think about that £24 or whatever the price is, and acknowledge that you've got a children or family or whatever, just acknowledge that they're going to hit food and water first or after the travel. So you're going to end up realizing they're going to end up paying more than what they should, and acknowledge that. But when you think about the platform ticket and all of that, scrap that piece because it's the interference of what the thing is. What you need to try and do is acknowledge its final course of action. It's like what is making the customers so depressed when they come out of those doors, not realizing it's time to reflect and acknowledge that. Because what they see is what they get, right? So they will use their eyes and ears, and they will like say, "Oh, this is a rip off because they did this and this and this." Well, I'm trying to clear it out and make sure that you get what you need, not your wants. So I'm going to establish the platform tickets are not needed because they make more money on the food and the water. Then the train ticket will be on top, right? So the train ticket makes more money, right? So when you think about it, right, the first thing you need to realize, food and water is a big element. So it's nothing to do with travel to start off with. So food and water comes first, right? Then it's travel. There's a lot of porters and guards make this as a slip up or a mistake and realize what they've done is wrong or they've done that as the correct movement. At certain actions, a lot of this is why I said it's reflecting. Reflect, time to reflect and look at it. Be realistic. If they're going to do something, they will achieve it. But in reality, I want people to realise this could happen on any railway, not just the North Norfolk Railway alone, but any railway, right? They always said, do you actually see, let's just say, Greater Anglia asking you for a platform ticket? The answer is no, right? The North Norfolk Railway or the Mid Norfolk Railway line and most of the Heritage Railway lines will probably ask for a platform ticket, right? I said scrap it all. Just acknowledge that you got food and water and acknowledge that you actually got more on the train travel payment when you go on a train, right? We have to prioritize what is the right and from wrong, and we have to acknowledge what is the best value in the end to accomplish that you got food and water as the main top priority, right? When it comes down to platform tickets, ignore it because that's it's the obvious thing that doesn't work out. And then you've got a train ticket that takes you anywhere you want to travel. People appreciate what they have been given, not the opposite direction. A lot of people are refusing to go back to the North Norfolk Railway or the Mid Norfolk Railway or any heritage railway for that matter because they all trying to support what they missed. So to acknowledge what has been unfolded, I said the proof is in the pudding. And I'm going to acknowledge that as the time to reflect on that. The proof is in the pudding. So when I acknowledge to people there's more than what you have been given, just remember when you get a train ticket to go to Holt, Waybourne, Sheringham, whatever, vice versa, and acknowledge that you also got other heritage railways that might do the similar format. The big problem what you're going to end up with is one question, and it's one question that the customers are asking about. I said it's all in one way of looking at when you use your eyes and ears, and when you go on the premises, it doesn't matter what premises it is, you have to acknowledge what you would what what is the benefit of having a platform ticket when it's not needed. A lot of people will recorrect that mistake and take that payment out, right? And acknowledge it. So when the patience and the virtue and everything else comes to play, it does make sense in the end. So it's time to reflect on what is a need and what is a want. But in the railway times, you've got to have to realistically yourself use your eyes and ears and realize what is actually beneficial. If you are really that, it's not it's not a bad thing. It's just to acknowledge what happened before as giving you advantage. Two, to reflect on everything that's happened since 2019 and 18 and forward, obviously going right up to this date, and acknowledge that the railway is basically being corrupted. So you got to have to be realistic. So then, when it comes to push to shove, you're ending up with one thing. What is the proof of having this and this when you know you're going to establish food and water led travel? Right? When the EDP or any newspaper, for example, I want you to reflect on that too. Read between the lines, read it forward and read it backwards. Then you'll understand something that you may not read the first time. But it tells you people look for things now and look into a brighter future because we don't want to go back. We want to go forward. And the only way you can move forward is to let go of what happened in the past and move forward. But you have to acknowledge platform tickets are not needed. Right? So for the North Norfolk Railway and all the Heritage Railway lines, please acknowledge that your food and water comes first. Is it buffet or travel on a train? Those are your two main money makers. The other one isn't a money maker. The platform ticket isn't a money maker. It's wasting what isn't a need. It's more of a want. So I'm trying to establish that. So please use this time to reflect. Please. And and you will understand why. Thank you very much.